So, I just watched War of the Worlds, starring Ice Cube. It's not a sentence I ever could have imagined I'd one day say. War of the Worlds 2025 is a movie that feels like it was made in defiance of whatever expectations people might have placed upon it. It's so naively unself-conscious about what it is and the legacy it's inheriting that it almost seems intentional. Whenever you adapt a work that enjoys an iconic status in the cultural canon like War of the Worlds does, you take a serious gamble. On the one hand, name recognition lends you an extensive set of eyes primed to look at what you're creating, and you have to do far less work to prove you deserve people's attention than a fully original work does. But you have to grapple with hard questions. You'll be walking in the shadow of what preceded you, and people will measure and define your work against what came before it. You have to navigate the line between faithful adaptation and creating something that stands on its own. A lot of viewers only want a story they already know realized on screen. Unfortunately, we writers are not usually content with just fulfilling someone else's vision. We tend to have ideas of our own, visions we want to see realized, even if it's in the reflection of art from yesteryear. You have to maintain humility and respect for the work you're adapting, and remember it's not all about you. War of the Worlds 2025 doesn't grapple with a single one of these questions. It's like if somebody read the original book, or even just watched the 2005 film, and somehow misunderstood everything that made it memorable and iconic.
The slow zoom on the face with the evil alien sound effect.
Yeah.
And this guy barely looking that concerned.
The purpose of this video will be twofold. A critique of the 2025 adaptation, and a love letter to the 2005 film and the original novel.
Oh. Hey, come in here.
Why you act like such a dick?
Which is why I'll have to give some brief background first. So, some background. I love War of the Worlds. I watched the Steven Spielberg 2005 adaptation when I was maybe 5 or 6, and I was obsessed with it growing up. I wouldn't get around to reading the original H.G. Wells novel until my senior year of high school, but when I did, it resonated with me more than I even expected. The way the book approaches the introduction of the Martians, and the emergence of the fighting machines, is so different from every other adaptation. I believe it captures everything that makes War of the Worlds so memorable. When the first Martian capsule arrives in England, it spends at least 2 chapters in its impact crater outside the town of Woking, idle, performing maintenance upon itself occasionally. Its presence evokes curiosity and wonderment from its onlookers, but not fear. While it becomes apparent that this outer space arrival is hostile, as those who approach too close to the metal canister are vaporized on the spot, it is otherwise not considered a real threat. How could this outer space tin can possibly contend with Great Britain's military might? There's a general sense of unease and worry, but for the time being, it's just stuck there in its crater. What can it really do? The point of view character leaves town with his wife for a brief spell, but then hastily parts from her to return home, hoping he doesn't miss the machine's invariable destruction, and eagerly anticipating a victory for humankind. A different story unfolds as he returns, however. Under the rainy night sky, he finds Woking hollow and deserted, with few discernible signs of life remaining, as plumes of crimson fire and green smoke burn in the distance. Finally, he sees it, far off in the distance, lit by the successive flashes of lightning. Quote, a monstrous tripod, higher than many houses, striding over the young pine trees and smashing them aside in its career, vanishing and reappearing 100 yards here, then there, almost instantly. It moves with a grace and fluidity almost of a living being, yet with a mechanical precision. A second tripod emerges from the woods ahead, as the trees part and fall aside, in mere moments. For some minutes, by the intermittent light, he watches these monstrous beings of metal move about in the distance over the hedge tops. It's not like the tripods spot the narrator and we descend into a heart-pumping chase sequence. Yet it's this jarring confrontation with the unknown, the otherworldly, accompanied by the sense that something horrible has already happened. And somehow these things are responsible. We already know these things to be hostile, and the revelation that they're not only mobile now, but tower 100 feet tall inspires real dread. Wells' descriptions of the tripods as lifelike and almost organic, whilst decidedly mechanical in form, confront you with the unfamiliarity and otherworldliness of their presence. They clearly don't belong here. The three-legged design is so effective because it communicates how not of this earth these beings are. We have four-legged, eight-legged, 100-legged life forms. But there's nothing three-legged on Earth. This moment blew 17-year-old me's mind when I read it. It spoke to me. It embodied exactly the kinds of things that I wanted in fiction. The impact it had on me creatively persists to this day, and it's why the book remains my all-time favorite. Given all this prelude, you might be thinking I'm building towards, and this is why I was disgusted or outraged by the 2025 adaptation. No, not really. Being a War of the Worlds fan, I mean, you're kind of used to being underwhelmed, you know what I mean? Although in this case, there was nothing to be underwhelmed by. I did not know this movie was even a thing, and the instant I knew it existed, I knew it sucked. However, I had not anticipated being so thoroughly entertained as I was by this movie. I don't even know if I'd call it so bad that it's good. I mean, I don't know, it's too typical. This was in a category of its own. It's Ice Cube, playing an NSA agent, who spends the whole movie in his office watching security cameras and stock footage newsreels while taking video calls and making this face every time something happens.
Yeah, this is something.
Oh.
Why? Yeah, I saw the cut.
Wait, that's the same shot!
Yeah, it is. Is it that difficult?
That was the same shot again! This is the same shot! Oh my god.
He's also the overprotective father archetype, except he's able to watch his kids basically everywhere they go. He has access to their phones and text messages, and he can spy into their refrigerators.
You need more
I
protein.
need to get to work.
No, you need to lay off the soy milk. You haven't had any protein this week.
Were this intended as a playful critique of the grotesque absurdity of the modern surveillance state through the lens of an overbearing dad who exploits the technology to monitor his kids, I might have said it was pretty clever. But I don't believe this movie's smart enough to do something like that on purpose. Only I am. War of the Worlds is a story traditionally told through a limited point of view because it leaves the audience to infer its true scale. By focusing on one point of view character and the surrounding events, you only see glimpses of the full picture. The blanks are left to our own imaginations to fill. We assume that this is only one story among millions that are likely very similar but totally different. We grasp how immense and far-reaching the story is by how small we feel before it. No amount of differing perspectives, subplots involving military commanders, foreign leaders, or galactic emperors could have made the story feel as enormous as it does when you focus on one man, or one man and his broken family. The sense of isolation, of being cut off from world events, is exemplified in this moment in the novel. For a time I believed that mankind had been swept out of existence, and that I stood there alone, the last man alive. I became more and more convinced that the extermination of mankind was, save for such stragglers as myself, already accomplished in this part of the world. The Martians, I thought, had gone on and left the country desolated, seeking food elsewhere. Perhaps even now they were destroying Berlin or Paris, or it might be they had gone northward. A similar idea is conveyed in the 2005 film through two conversations that happened concurrently between extras. It was clear they did their homework.
We've got it the worst, that's what I heard. The U.S. mostly, South America and Asia, there's nothing going on in Europe.
Europe got the worst of it. That's what everybody's saying.
We'll revisit this theme later on. So in the 2025 movie, you have Ice Cube with unprecedented, omniscient access to every major event and attack through street and security cameras. More than that, he can hack basically anything with a few keystrokes. There's always a drone somewhere miraculously nearby he can commandeer when the plot requires it, and real-time news coverage that somehow operates unimpeded. even as the infrastructure of society crumbles and data centers everywhere are compromised. CNN is there covering it all live. That said, however, I'm not against the idea, or at least, I can see how this might have looked like a good idea on paper. A more claustrophobic War of the Worlds that centers less on the protagonist's own desperate struggle through the carnage, but on him helplessly observing that of his own families, and doing what he can to guide them and keep them out of trouble with limited means to protect them. It's not the worst idea ever. I will say that Ice Cube, despite being a peculiar choice of actor, is quite likable. He plays the role well of a dad who tries to be tough on his kids, but still ultimately cares.
Dad, playing video games is my job. I'm a tech visionary in a pre-funding stage.
All I know is I've been pre-funding your ass for years, and you need to get a real job.
This is my job.
When he discovers he wasn't invited to his daughter's baby shower, you can tell he feels genuinely hurt without having to overdo it. Regarding Ice Cube spending the entire movie switching between camera feeds, there's an obvious comparison I've been avoiding that I can no longer ignore. Five Nights at Freddy's. You see, Five Nights at Freddy's is a small, niche, lesser-known horror game you may not have heard of, in which you play as a security guard who must survive the titular 5 nights at the titular Freddy's, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, by checking cameras, managing limited energy to use lights and doors, while the haunted animatronics hunt you down. It was a novel horror premise. A long-running challenge the series faced, however, was finding ways to keep the player engaged. This almost always meant that with each installment they added new things for the player to monitor and keep track of, which sometimes straddled the line between engaging and just outright stressful. In like manner, War of the Worlds inundates Ice Cube with FaceTime calls, team meetings, urgent text messages from superiors and colleagues while juggling his responsibilities as an NSA officer. It borders on overstimulation and could even make for a stressful viewer experience, though this wasn't a major problem for me. It's kind of impressive, actually, what suspense you can create with just the boss calling you while you're having an emotionally charged conversation with your child and getting pinged by several colleagues while you're also trying to write an email. I admit, it takes some cleverness and ingenuity to achieve suspense through such a boring premise. If the War of the Worlds of old captured the visceral, instinctive fear of the unknown and a hostile force against which humanity is utterly powerless, then War of the Worlds 2025 captures the visceral fear of hearing your phone ring on your day off and remembering you were scheduled to work that day. To the film's credit, sometimes the premise almost proves its merit. A scene where Ice Cube has to hack a Tesla remotely and transport his wounded, bleeding daughter while keeping the vehicle from the tripod's line of sight and bootstrap the car's dwindling battery long enough makes for decent suspense when you shut off your brain. This could work as a set piece for a goofy action film that isn't taking itself too seriously. But this is War of the Worlds 2025, and no one can be faulted for being aware of that fact at every moment. Just when you're forgetting what you're watching, you randomly remember, I'm watching a War of the Worlds adaptation starring Ice Cube. Why the fuck is it Ice Cube? And usually you're reminded because he makes this face. It isn't a bad set piece. It introduces a conflict. She is bleeding and stranded, and Ice Cube can't get through to any emergency services. It actually had me going, how's he going to get out of this? When he hacks the nearby Tesla, it's pretty comical, but it was kind of clever. They could have left the suspense there and just focused only on him navigating the Tesla to its destination, but no, they go even further. They ask, what if the Tesla was low on battery? It only has enough energy for another few miles, while the destination is at least 15 miles. It's genuinely uncertain what he's going to do. By accessing the vehicle's programming, he disables all features draining battery, including the internal cameras, thus parting with his daughter, now no longer able to watch over her. And this comes after a dialogue exchange, albeit pretty corny dialogue exchange, where she confronts him about his overbearing behavior. It's quite on the nose, as she just blatantly tells him that he thinks he has more power than he really has.
Think you have more power than you really do.
Goes on this whole tirade, and even says, you thought you had the power to save Mom.
You had the power to have saved Mom from a disease.
I'm like, jeez. Was that necessary? Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, his wife died before the events of this movie. He couldn't even have the decency to just be divorced like Ray so I could make fun of him. But yeah, the resolution to the conflict also has symbolic importance, as he makes the difficult decision to sever himself from her and trust the vehicle will arrive safely. Ice Cube effectively relinquishes any remaining control he had over the situation. It's not bad writing. Although, relevant to my point regarding limited point of view, there's another glaring fault in this film's premise that can't be so easily ignored. One constant across War of the Worlds iterations is that the characters they follow are ordinary, insignificant people. In the novel, you follow an unnamed journalist/amateur astronomist. In 2005, you follow Tom Cruise, a total wreck with a backlog of career fuck-ups, caught up in Scientology scandals, and I'm looking at the actor. In 2005, you follow Ray, a divorced man, and his 2 kids, who hate him because he's divorced and also a loser. In either story, their lives amount to very little in the global political scene. Their deaths will be noticed by no one other than their immediate loved ones, even if that's only to say, this is why mom divorced you. Meanwhile, in 2025, Ice Cube has a Zoom meeting with the President of the United States, in which I swear to God the President says, it's time to initiate this War of the Worlds.
I see no other option to initiate this War of the Worlds to save us all.
And Ice Cube makes the fucking face again. I swear to God, he makes the same expression throughout this entire movie. It doesn't matter what happens. They cut to Ice Cube's reaction. He's just got this same bewildered, kind of agitated, like, what? Huh? I don't know. And sometimes it's like Ice Cube's doing his own spin on the Home Alone face. And it's fucking hilarious every time. Another relevant extension to the ordinary protagonist convention in War of the Worlds is this. There is no hero who saves the day. We all know the common cold killed the aliens ending by now.
Stupid human propaganda. The very concept of a superior alien species being felled by something as pathetic as germs is sheer fantasy.
When H.G. Wells wrote his novel, the British Empire was still the major world power. As Wells himself writes in the opening of the book,
and before we judge the Martians too harshly, we must remember what utter destruction our own species has wrought. The Tasmanians were utterly swept out of existence in a war of extermination waged by European immigrants. Are we such apostles of mercy as to complain if the Martians warred in the same spirit?
The goal was to hold a mirror up to Britain's face. It humbles humanity in forcing them to contend with a species far elevated from our own and against which our military might is utterly powerless. In the end, humanity isn't the hero that saves the day. We are simply another life form among others on Earth, a part of nature and not above it. Although a story that effectively resolves itself without active input by the characters is traditionally frowned upon, in War of the Worlds it's the thematic climax of everything the narrative has built towards. Before the reveal, you don't see it coming. Afterwards, it feels inevitable. So in 2025, Ice Cube and his family combine their wits and unique strengths to defeat the aliens by translating genetic code into a computer virus. Because in this film, aliens feed on data. Data. What the fuck do you mean they feed on data? It's an abstract concept. It's just, information. Do books count? I mean, they sure contain a lot of data. Where do you work out? Oh, the library, fucking looking ass. It's worse because when it's first shown that the aliens are targeting government data centers and extracting their contents, the first 2 explanations the film offers are perfectly fine and kind of interesting. First, it's they're crippling the military and taking away our ability to carry out strategic attacks. I'm glad they at least found a more creative answer to why the modern military can't defeat the aliens that didn't just involve giving the tripods force fields. This also comes after a brief moment where humanity is fighting back and turning the tide of battle, a scene I kind of unironically liked.
Woo, hell yeah. Take your intergalactic asses back home! Back home!
Then the second explanation, in which they add further, they're extracting the data to become smarter. The more they learn, the greater their advantages against us. And alright, I'm still with you. You haven't lost me yet. These are at least creative ideas that genuinely add a new spin to the original. But no, they fucking ruin it. They just have to add, no, data is like food to them. It's nutrition. And I'm just fucking done. That is... Why? Yeah, this feels like a good point to shift gears a little. Since we're already on the subject, let's talk a little more about the aliens. Or, more accurately, and importantly, the tripods. The tripod design is the only thing that matters in a War of the Worlds adaptation. Everything else is trivial. Don't believe me? Well, let's look at what Herbert George Wells himself had to say about their first illustrated depiction.
The artist presented the fighting machines as tilted, stiff tripods, without either flexibility or subtlety, and with an altogether misleading monotony of effect. The pamphlet containing these renderings had a considerable vogue, and I mention them here simply to warn the reader against the impression they may have created. To my mind, the pamphlet would have been much better off without them.
Now, imagine dropping the ball so bad that the author had to include a corrective statement in the actual novel just to reiterate he hated your shit. So, how are the tripods in this movie? How do they measure up against previous designs? It feels like a cruel joke to even ask these questions, because of course they don't. Although I'll admit, they're not an exceptional failure either. The reasons their design in this movie falls flat for me don't deviate markedly from the ways they failed in previous designs. There are, I would say, two camps as far as tripod designs I don't like. Camp number 1. When they're not even tripods. I'm looking at you, War of the Worlds 1953. I don't care if you are a breakthrough in special effects and impressive for the time. Your fighting machines don't walk on 3 legs. This is the only reason I still haven't watched this adaptation. And Camp 2. Copied the homework assignment and changed it a little, but didn't understand it past the surface level. In other words, well, they're supposed to be tripods, so let's make sure they have 3 legs. I was going to go on a whole diatribe about the BBC tripods here, because I thought the agreement was a lot more unanimous that the design sucked, but I guess they're considered like the one good thing about that adaptation, so I don't know. I looked more deeply into it and I realized that there was actually a lot more thought into these designs than I had given them credit for. And I mean, on closer inspection, they're all right. They're more menacing than I had initially thought they were, but I don't know. I can't not see these as like Mike Wazowski on stilts, you know. They just seem so impractical, like, you know, with the arms jutting out of the sides of the head, like there's no anatomical cohesion here. When they're walking, they look like they're balancing on stilts. I don't know, that just bothers me. I don't know, I don't like that design, but continuing. Any other categories I could name are more specific and nuanced distinctions that effectively amount to personal preference on my end. For example, I don't understand the appeal of the Jeff Wayne tripod design at all. But it is to camp number 2 that 2025 belongs. Yeah, I am really not a fan of this sleek, white, modern look they've got going on here. It feels too familiar. You know, like this is our idea of what high-tech military technology looks like. When you give the fighting machine such a terrestrial Lockheed Martin aesthetic, you just demystify them. The blurred line between mechanical and organic, characteristic of the fighting machines, is what contributed to their otherworldliness. I touched earlier upon why the 3-legged design is so effective, but it's key to note that their being 3-legged isn't the only thing that matters here. It's what this choice says about the thinking that went into their design, and how it translates into their presentation. The emphasis Wells placed on the tripod's grace and fluidity of movement, against the destructive and murderous havoc they wreak. The tripods aren't just threatening or imposing, they're creepy, unsettling even, and most importantly, scary. They evoke a fear not unlike the Uncanny Valley. For those not familiar, Uncanny Valley essentially refers to that creepiness that dolls and bad CGI faces evoke. In other words, almost human, but off enough that it's unnerving. I think 2005 was the most successful in this regard. Spindly, black limbs evoke an unconscious association with things that our brains are primed to fear, like spiders and various venomous insects. Their physical features evoke predator physiology. The way their torsos lean forward, their hooded eyes and angular features. They don't merely adapt to the original. They don't even just put their own spin on it. They distill the essence of the menace H.G. Wells was trying to evoke. I would even argue they bring the original design philosophy the nearest to its logical conclusion. All that said, even though I don't believe the tripods in 2025 succeed, I'm gonna be honest. They kinda grew on me. I'm not sure what it was. Stockholm Syndrome, perchance? I suppose in certain shots when they're far away or marching in groups they looked somewhat cool. I also liked that they're not completely invulnerable. The army lands some successful blows to the machines, somewhere near the midpoint of the movie, which was refreshing. In the book there were a couple of brief victories against the Martians, most notably SS Thunderchild. It wasn't unremitting hopelessness like it is in 2005. Still, these tripods essentially amount to high-tech killer robots. They're threatening, technically. They wield death rays and wreak mass destruction and death. But they're just not scary. Also, I am not giving this movie a pass just because it's clearly low budget. And we can also probably infer where a lot of that budget went to. I don't believe a good War of the Worlds adaptation requires a massive $132 million budget to be good. Do you want to know why I think this? Because when I think back to my favorite elements of War of the Worlds, the moments that have always stood out to me and left the most impact are when the tripods are shown at a distance, obscured, in silhouette. In both the book and movie, I have always found it shines best when it leans into the eeriness and dread of seeing the fighting machines linger from afar. If budget is an issue, then lean into those elements, the ones that don't require the fighting machines to be in discernible detail. Just accept that you will not be having a huge, explosive special effects blockbuster. 2005 already beat you, and there's no way you're going to surpass it. And for fuck's sake, use stop motion. We have been long overdue for a War of the Worlds film with Sinbad-esque stop motion creepiness.
The aliens are allergic to germs!
Now that we've addressed the allegations, let's circle back a bit. So the aliens in this movie are not here to harvest human beings to use their blood as fertilizer in their colonial project to terraform Earth into a hospitable environment for their species and genocide all native life. No, the aliens are here to feast on our data. They came back to Earth. Yes, back. Apparently they were here before and the government covered it up, because they were attracted by the enormous data contained in a secret government project, codenamed the Goliath Program. The Goliath Program is a surveillance apparatus in this story's version of America that hasn't been unleashed yet. It can supposedly anticipate people's thoughts before they occur, and control them even better than before. The government knew this would attract the aliens, but did it anyway, 'cause evil. And of course, there's one specific government bad guy who becomes the villain in the third act when Ice Cube takes a stand against his nefarious plot. Do I really need to spell out how fucking ridiculous and out of place this is in anything calling itself War of the Worlds? Does it really need explaining?
Agent Coulson is evil because he created a surveillance network and to spy on the planet.
Right.
And all of that data was so juicy and delicious that the data-eating aliens flew to Earth.
and he had a contingency plan for in case that happens.
Well, here's the good news. There's more.
The invaders won't stop until they have it all.
What am I supposed to be?
They won't
What do you
stop.
know that I don't know?
Won't stop until they have it all. Won't stop until they have it all. Won't stop until they have it all.
It's you! It's you!
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ice Cube's deadbeat son turns out to be the big-time mastermind hacker who Ice Cube and the NSA were trying to bust in the first act of the film.
Is using their top-secret Goliath program to collect our personal data to use against us.
Not on my watch.
Everywhere we...
This is how Ice Cube discovers the truth, by the way. I find the whole idea of Project Goliath kind of ridiculous because it's like we've already been shown this far-reaching surveillance apparatus that already exists in the real world, but now it's like it's revealed that the government actually had an even worse surveillance apparatus. Like, what's the point? It all amounts to the stalest and least fucking interesting idea imaginable. The government evil and is telling lies to hide the truth. Oh my god, what a fucking groundbreaking concept. Libertarians and schizos are eating fucking good right now. This is y'all's Black Panther. Now, am I suggesting that the state doesn't keep secrets or cover up nefarious plots? Absolutely not. Just look at the CIA's involvement in literally any Latin American country. Of course, the dizzy bastards accidentally used black highlighter on their records, so you may have a hard time reading them. I don't have time to go into the state's role as a tool of the ruling class in a society for the maintenance of order between classes with diametrically opposed economic interests. The TLDR, the state keeps secrets. Most of them are less exciting than aliens and grand nefarious ambitions, but nonetheless horrifying. But anyway, here's the kicker. I think it was a good plot twist. Want to know how I know? In the moments leading up to the reveal, my friend, exasperated, says, "It's the sun, isn't it?" Before repeating, "It's gonna be the sun. It's gonna be the fucking sun, isn't it?" And then it was revealed. It was his son. My friend declared, "I knew it. I fucking knew it." And though there was some noticeable agitation and frustration as he said this was when I knew this was a good plot twist. For you see, the best kinds of plot twists are the ones that make you shout, "I knew it." The ones you can piece together in the moments before the reveal. It means the film has properly set up all the pieces. A bad plot twist is, contrary to the nature of plot twists and how we understand it, one which the audience cannot reasonably predict or see coming. When we're introduced to this hacker anonymous character in the first act, we assume reasonably that he's just a one-off antagonist. He's somebody who serves to illustrate to the viewer what Ice Cube deals with as an NSA agent. This plot thread is quickly circumvented and made irrelevant the moment the invasion kicks off. We forget about it almost immediately as it's superseded by everything else. In later dialogue exchanges, when the son tries to go on about the government keeping secrets, which Ice Cube dismisses as more of his conspiracy nonsense, we don't connect him with the hacker right away. The reveal also changes the dynamic in a meaningful way. Ice Cube and his son now work together to defeat the greater evil, Government Man. It's corny and ham-fisted, but I still enjoyed it. Son's all, "All right, Dad, you ready to join the resistance?" Dad's all,
I could do that.
At this point, I was pretty much just along for the ride. My suspension of disbelief had entered a catatonic state a while ago. This film was clearly playing by its own rules, and didn't care whether I had a problem with it. I was having fun. Whether my grin was mocking and contemptuous or sincere, probably some combination. It was on my face at all events. Now, remember all that stuff I said earlier about how this film's resolution misses the point of the original novel's common cold ending? Well, that wasn't entirely true. You may be surprised to learn this, but 2025 does end with the common cold killing the aliens. In a way. After banding together to combine their wits and talents, the family delivers the finishing blow against the aliens with a USB drive. I won't dwell upon the fact that the whole third act climax revolves around using an Amazon drone to deliver the USB to Ice Cube.
Right here.
Oh, it's the future of delivery. They've been training us for months. I need you to place an official order on Amazon to activate the drone.
Nuts.
But contained within this USB drive is a computer virus. Ice Cube plugs the USB into the Goliath database, thus wiping out the entire invasion. So it wasn't a a literal virus, but a computer virus that killed the aliens. And also Ice Cube, mainly Ice Cube. The fact the entire invasion spans a single day and is defeated is, I don't know. But hey, technically speaking, you could say the aliens were undone by a virus. If I'm being honest, I don't even think a War of the World adaptation needs to end with the aliens dying of the common cold. I don't want it to be something that one has to include because, you have to end with the aliens dying of the cold. It's tradition. This is precisely the pitfall I believe the 2005 film falls into. In that movie, the ending really does feel like it comes out of nowhere, and only because it's time to end the movie.
From the moment the invaders arrived, breathed our air, ate, and drank, they were doomed. They were undone, destroyed, after all of man's weapons and devices had failed, by the tiniest creatures that God and his wisdom put upon this earth.
Faithfulness to the original work becomes an almost get-out-of-jail-free card for the writers to point to. The ending feels like plot convenient. Hey, don't look at me. That's just how it ends in the book. I'm just staying faithful to the original work here, okay? You got a problem with the ending? Talk to H.G. Wells about it. I don't know. I think it's illustrative of the challenges of translating prose to the screen. Writing gives you access to a character's, and by extension the author's, innermost thoughts and feelings that can't be achieved in film. In film, we don't have H.G. Wells to walk us through the events and remind us, hey, isn't this just like that time we did this to the Aboriginals? And settler colonialism was still a very contemporary and ongoing thing when H.G. Wells wrote War of the Worlds, as was disease and how it often devastated colonial projects. In the age of modern medicine, the common cold killing the aliens doesn't necessarily carry the same aha impact it did before. I still believe it's just as relevant today, however. The specters of settler colonialism and genocide still haunt America, Australia, and all those regimes built upon it. More than that, the social and economic structures born from this past still remain, as do the scars. In an age where alien invasion stories have been so saturated, War of the Worlds has consistently managed to stand out, despite being the first of its kind, precisely because it so viscerally captures the horror and utter helplessness of being colonized by an advanced civilization committed to seeing your people's extinction.
They defeated the greatest power in the world in a couple days. These are only the first. They'll keep coming. This is not a war any more than there's a war between men and maggots. This is an extermination.
Adapting a work as well-known and recognizable as War of the Worlds is a risky endeavor. The need to create a good adaptation and also a good movie are intertwined and at odds with one another. Fortunately, the two iterations of this property that I hold nearest, 2005 and the original book, I like for largely the same reasons. The imagery, the unnerving and otherworldly depiction of the fighting machines, the sense of hopelessness and existential terror, the focus on a small and intimate story against a backdrop of planetary scale, and so forth. Ice Cube's War of the Worlds embodies none of these qualities. The film is committed to playing by its own rules, and I enjoyed every minute of it. It might be one of the stupidest films I have ever seen. It's really a rare kind of stupid. A film like this only comes once in a millennium. The balance of dumb, bad, and inexplicably entertaining requires a deft hand and a talent rarely seen. I have never been so thoroughly entertained and dumbstruck by a movie throughout every second of its runtime. This movie altered my brain chemistry. It undid my foundational understanding of the reality that I live in. Although only a few days ago, as of writing, the memory of who I was before I saw this movie appears a distant, faded dream. It's been confirmed that this movie was made during quarantine and sat on the shelf for 5 years, although it was so blatantly obvious and everyone had already guessed it. I remember recently rewatching Lindsay Ellis's War of the Worlds video while I was working on this one, when she mentions that Steven Spielberg himself said that War of the Worlds adaptations often released during times of cultural distress, and how they've distilled their era in some form or another.
Is it terrorists?
This came from someplace else.
What do you mean, like Europe? No, Robbie, not like Europe!
And my immediate thought was, Dear God, please do not let this fucking movie be the thing that represents the decade. But the more I thought about it, I realized 2025's War of the Worlds is actually the perfect personification of the era we're in. It is an adaptation of an iconic work of fiction of the past, a shallow emulation of something once groundbreaking and pioneering, divorced from all that made it so, borrowing the names and iconography of cultural artifacts while doing nothing innovative or challenging, arbitrarily starring a big-name pop celebrity who has no rhyme or reason to be there apart from, I guess, celebrity recognition. Half of it is a glorified Amazon ad, and it was all thrown onto streaming with little fanfare. Oh, and of course, it was all created during quarantine lockdown and told entirely through Zoom meetings, team meetings, FaceTime calls, and instant messaging. I cannot think of a more appropriate encapsulation of our times. If this film were the only thing aliens had to go off of to understand contemporary human culture and society, their image wouldn't be so skewed as we might imagine.